Welcome to Loup TV. I'm your host, Gene Munster. I'm joined today by Matt Johnson. He is the founder of Omnia Fishing. Many of you have probably fished once or twice in your life. Very few are actual anglers. It is the correct term to describe people who fish. And if Matt is one of those people, one of those anglers, and I welcome you. And maybe just as a spoiler, the reason why we're talking about Omnia Fishing is that it caught my attention that ultimately that this is a great example of vertical commerce with some tech backbone to it that I was not aware of. And when I think about how commerce has evolved over the past 20 years, Amazon capturing much of our attention, but then these wonderful verticals that kind of blossom underneath the Amazon umbrella. I think about Etsy, I think about all the different shops on Shopify. And this is an example of an emerging company that has found something that is quite unique and a passionate base. And so welcome, Matt. And maybe we can just start there it is a labor of love to start a company. We refer to it at Loup of 5 years of a commitment to suffering. So why did you embark on this journey to start Omnia Fishing?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. I always tell everyone I am a passionate angler, but I definitely wasn't driven by my passion for the sport of angling to found Omnia Fishing. I'm a second-time founder. I had a prior exit in 2014 to Lowrance Electronics. They were the marine leader in electronics, mostly targeting anglers. And I found through some of my relationships that I built there when I actually learned the business of fishing that there was this massive gap in shifting consumers to purchase online, purchase tackle, rods and reels, things like that online. And I was surprised to see that it was a $4.5 billion industry just in the United States for those specific items: rods, reels, line, tackle, anything that we call kind of hand to fish's mouth. But it was being extremely underserved. I'm glad you mentioned Amazon as an example. I think it'd be crazy to say that Amazon's not a competitor of ours, but their model really isn't set up to be able to service the wide breadth of product selection that's out there. And what we find is that the search intent for tackle typically involves something based on location, like the water body. And so we set out to build a model that is very experiential based, has community elements, but essentially tries to take every piece of tackle and item out there and make the shopping experience very relevant to the consumer based on their location, preferences, time of year, species. And it's a pretty hard thing to do. So we had to build start with a really complicated algorithm and try and solve that problem. But ultimately, the reason we were motivated to start the company was to try and convince the consumer that they no longer needed to go in store to ask the question, what do I need right now to go fish this lake? We wanted to do that at scale and do it all digitally and then shift. About 15% of tackle sales are happening online at the time. And our mission really is to shift that and grow, to convince a consumer they can get all of the information they need, discovery, learn, and buy all in one location.
When you think about the old model, the old way of doing it, I think of kind of the big box sports retailers. That would be an obvious place where people could go. Was that the majority of it, or was the majority of tackle, and I like that hand of fish's mouth, was that done through smaller, I think even like convenience stores, gas stations, sometimes
Yeah.
have some tackle at it. Where was the lion's share coming from?
Yeah, so our estimates are 60% or higher was coming from big box. There was the massive consolidation that was happening too. Just in a short period of time, we saw Bass Pro buy Cabela's, and then the Bass Pro Group also buying Sportsman's Warehouse. So you had this rapid consolidation of that big box model. And they own that in-store traffic. So these brands are really hamstrung. You think of a brand like Pure Fishing that owns Berkeley and Stren and some of the major brands in the industry. That represented a substantial portion of their sales, still does today. And obviously, big box, when you control the consumer, you push to private label, and because they own that, you have this brand kind of stuck. Amazon continued to define the expectations of the consumer to shop online. There wasn't good technology to get the consumer feeling good about the products they were selecting based on where they fish, what they were looking to do. So there just really wasn't a good solution. They were kind of stuck. So we're trying to unlock all that.
Let me interrupt there on the good solution side. I suspect that the people at the big box sports retailers understand the importance of commerce and moving that portion of their sales, that $4.5 billion portion online. So if we had one of them on our episode today, what would their response be to that? What would Cabela's say about what are they doing regarding the angler tackling market?
Yeah, it's hard to speculate, but what we found is that prior to the acquisition by Bass Pro, Cabela's was making some pretty substantial headway in e-commerce. They were a trusted brand. I don't know what they were doing to try and make a good shopping experience as far as product selection, but they were working to increase the amount of transactions they created online. Bass Pro actually, the way it appears to us is that they basically deprecated that process. They really haven't prioritized it. And as you know, we actually have an advisory board meeting that was a C-level executive at Cabela's for 20 years. He basically said, when these executives wake up every morning, they try to create a better experience in store. The fish tanks, the mounts, they really are still focused on that in-store experience. And I just don't know that that's what the customer is looking for today. I definitely don't think that's what the customer is going to be looking for in the future. And I think we'll be well positioned from an SEO standpoint, from an experience standpoint, to really swoop in and serve the customer the way they expect it moving forward.
How do you talk about the experience side of this and building that online? So how does it sounds good, but how do you actually do it?
Yeah, it is hard. We have built an algorithm. We have a baseline of assets. We've got 150,000 unique water bodies. So we've defined the boundary of the water body. It's indicated as a PIN and it's an asset in our database. And then we've built an algorithm that takes the details of each of those assets and connects them with the right product all the way down to the variant level. And what I mean by that is you think of Rapala makes every single one of their baits in 7 arbitrary lengths and floats and sizes and 75 different colors. And as an example to highlight that, we'll say Lake Mille
Let me
Lacs.
interrupt. Where are Rapalas made these days?
Good question. I believe they're made overseas. There is some Asian manufacturing,
Okay.
but they do control a lot of that supply chain themselves.
I
And
apologize
Rapala's
for the interruption. Back to the A topic, 150,000 bodies. You guys are cataloging these. Why is that important to the experience?
right. So what we do as a baseline is we take details about the specific body of water and then parse down our selection. So as a single element to highlight, I would say, so Lake Mille Lacs, which is about an hour and a half north of where we're both sitting, has very clear water. And so we'll take 75 different potential colors. And because of that clear water, we assign a clarity rating to that body of water. And then we can say, let's only present very natural color patterns, because a fish doesn't need a bright chartreuse or a bright color to gather its attention. They would actually see that as a negative because they can see very clear in that water body. So it helps us very quickly say, let's take 75 colors on the wall and let's only shine the lights on the 10 or 12 that make the most sense for Mille Lacs, as an example. So then we'll take details about, different seasonal patterns, the species present, what type of structure and bait fish are in all of those water bodies, and create unique shopping experience for every lake. We call it Shop by Lake.
Okay, so typically it's the actual angler that's on the site going through and saying, I'm going to be fishing. You gave the Mille Lacs example at this time of year, and then you would recommend different tackle for that type of fishing.
Yeah, we think of it as 3 prongs. So first is a more traditional shopping experience where you would do your own filtering and sorting. You'd say, I'm looking for a bass jig in this color. So that's our traditional model. The second would be all the way on the other end of the spectrum, where you'd say, I'm going to Mille Lacs and I don't know what I'm looking for. Please present the products that would be best for me. And that's really based on that algorithm. But that algorithm is constantly fed by purchase patterns. We have active content, fishing reports instead of reviews are filed by the people that it's a post-purchase experience. So we're continuously improving and making that individual experience on a specific body of water unique. And then third is this intersection where they merge. So we take details about where a location or what location the customers come from. And even if they go into a traditional shopping experience, we can begin to take content about what we know of that consumer, either their location and active content in the area, and start to filter and sort products based on some of the information that's continued to train our algorithm. So
bringing content together with the shopping experience.
Right. Like Glossier is an example, a multi-billion-dollar valuation recently. talks about this contextual commerce. Let's present the thing back to the consumer. Let's put the products we recommend in context, and let's give them a good experience where they feel like they're actually being recommended products based on a lot of good information. And some of it kind of feels serendipitous, like when you arrive on the site and it says, well, here's some products. And by the way, here's a jig that Gene just recommended that he caught a smallmouth bass on Mille Lacs. Somebody said, "Well, this is very interesting and relevant to me as an angler," and so we've seen incredible results with that so far.
So if we look at the typical shopper on your site, the person who's searching for something versus kind of purchasing off of recommendations, I'm sure you have the data. I don't know if it's something you're willing to share, a percentage of transactions that come from the recommendation engine.
Yeah, so it's quickly becoming a bigger portion of the total transactions that we see were influenced with one-click attribution from a specific body of water or a fishing report that was filed by the Omnia community.
Gotcha.
So it is rapidly growing, but at the same time, we still want to table stakes be a great e-commerce retailer and convince a consumer that we have the products, the shipping, you're going to get the product fast, and lay those table stakes on e-commerce as well. And that's still the largest portion of our total sales. But as an example, and some things we can share, we've generated over 2,000 fishing reports just in the last couple months, very well distributed across the entire United States. We've shipped to all 50 states, and we're growing over 300% year over year for the last 3 years. So
who writes the reports?
Actually, the Omnia community, it's part of a post-purchase process where instead of filing a review on the product, they actually file where they fished, not location, but specific body of water. And then they indicate which bait is, we've branded hot bait. And that will actually train the algorithm at that water body level and continue to improve the overall shopping experience on Omnia.
Two more questions.
Yeah.
Question number one is, what is a typical, can you give us a range about what a typical lure costs these days?
Yeah, good question. It's surprisingly high and probably exceeded my expectations. In the hard bait category, you're probably looking between $6 and $12, but the high end range is we sell $25 jerk baits. Bass lures, you're probably in that $5 range. Our average order value is between $85 and $110, depending on the time of the year. And that's typically 3 to 5 brands and about 12 products.
Amazing. Final question. If you think about, where the business goes over the next 5, 10 years, where is Omnia Fishing 10 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, we've set our sights on substantially increasing the number of people that shop online. So if you look at, it's a $4.5 billion industry every year. We want to own as large a portion of that as possible. And we think we can do it through content and context in shopping. There's some pretty great technology on the back end that's trying to continuously create a better experience for consumers. And we really are focused on shifting that consumer online. I think in the future, just by staying in the bass freshwater market, we can be $1 billion company, just because of the size and the passion behind this thing. So that's really where we're headed.
Quite passionate base there. And do you see yourself as a standalone company? Are you part of something bigger ultimately? What's your best guess there?
I think we're standalone for now. I do think that there are opportunities to work with other brick and mortar companies to synchronize inventory and offer pickup in stores. This is a really passionate, pretty affluent demographic, surprisingly. And there are pretty big opportunities to continue to unlock value from the customer base and make that whole cycle pick up same day.
I'm embarrassed to say I come from the land of 10,000 lakes. I don't know much about fishing. I can say that I do know other anglers, and I can see this is a good way to find a lure that would impress them, the right lure for the right person in the right lake, just purely for the gift giving side of it. So selfishly, thank you for making my gift giving just a little bit better, Matt. You've thought through all this in detail. It's clear. Wish you the best of success. Loup is not an investor in this, but we wish you, of course, all the best of success on the behalf of all the anglers out there. Matt and Gene and Loup TV, bye for now.